Hi, I'm Leanne Hancock. I'm the Housing Options Manager for Torbay Council.
Hello, my name is Matthew Hunt. I'm the Building Control Manager for Torbay Council.
I'm Robert Kelly and I'm the Housing Standards and Environmental Protection Manager.
So on the night, my team were contacted along with other teams to attend the site because there were people displaced from accommodation. There were around 20 people that weren't able to return to their accommodation. So on the night, the priority was to collect the details of everybody that was affected and together make sure that their immediate needs were met. So these people had left their accommodation without anything, so they had no money, no clothes, no food, they didn't have access to essential medication. Out of the 20 people that were displaced, we accommodated 6 households in the travel lodge, and then other people went to stay with friends and relatives, and some of the landlords arranged accommodation for their tenants as well.
On the evening of the incident, I was contacted by the Council's Emergency Planning Officer because the fire service had requested building control attendance. During the response, our role is to look at the condition of the buildings and try to ascertain and mitigate any dangers to members of the public by removing any dangers. This generally involves setting out an enlarged cordon. This was set against the knowledge that a large storm was coming through for both Friday and Saturday. The cordon was agreed with the fire service and this was maintained all over the weekend.
So I was on site on Thursday evening while the fire was in full flow, primarily to help the emergency response, really, to collect information, to speak to residents on site, to find out their needs, their accommodation needs and their urgent medical needs. But then also, as the Housing Standards Manager, to get an idea of the potential impact of the fire on dwellings, how significant the fire was going to be with regards to the number of properties that would be out of action in the long term. And also to start to pull together some of the information. It's really important that we get as much information as we can, as soon as we can. So understanding the ownership details for some of the properties, freeholders, leasehold relationships, tenancies, just bringing together all of that information as soon as possible is important to make sure we can effectively respond as quickly as we can and as effectively as we can.
On the Friday following the incident, building control surveyors were on site all day liaising with the fire service. Further elements of the structure with respect to the roof were removed and elements of the building were made safe.
So our work continued into the weekend in terms of supporting people to access things that they needed from their accommodation and ensure that they had somewhere to stay over the weekend. I was part of the incident control meeting, so that enabled me to keep residents and businesses updated over the weekend and throughout the early course of this week as to what was happening in terms of the site and what our intentions were in terms of the cordon and keeping people updated.
A number of my team members were with the Housing Options team in Paignton Library, covering that information that needed to be collated, making sure that we built that narrative even further and assisted people in the right direction for the help that they needed. And then once the weather had calmed down and there was an official handover to the local authority, then that's when it really begins in earnest for the Housing Standards team. So 2 full-time officers all day Monday and all day Tuesday were accessing any dwelling that was it was possible to access, just to ascertain the standard of condition of the property, whether it was habitable, and it's quite clear from the condition of the properties on the front that that wasn't going to be the case, but more importantly, which ones could be accessed with a light touch as we could. So lots of agreements between the officers and building owners and landlords, just to undertake some immediate actions to make sure that the occupants could return to the dwellings, return to their homes, and then actually identifying the long-term solutions to some of the other properties that are clearly more affected. That resulted in the service of a number of prohibition orders, emergency prohibition orders, which effectively make the property uninhabitable until those prohibition orders are safe to be removed. And it's quite obvious from the structural damage to the properties and the fact that they're not weatherproof that electrical issues and structural collapse are two significant risks. So the prohibition orders prohibit use until the properties are structurally safe and the electrics have been signed off as safe.
So currently we still have one household in accommodation with the local authority. Others have been able to return, and we hope that the remaining household that's in temporary accommodation will be able to return to their property later on this week when a few works have been completed.
Further visits were carried out with the mind to reduce the size of the cordon after the winds had dropped down. This was also in the presence of the TDA structural engineer, and the cordon was able to reduce to be able to open both sides of Torbay Road. Our involvement now moving forward is to liaise with the insurers of the properties and their loss adjusters to ensure that they can progress matters to a satisfactory conclusion.
My team now will work with the landlords to ensure that those agreements for works to be undertaken, those immediate actions have been undertaken, so that the occupiers can return to their homes safely. And in the long term, ensuring that the properties are fully safe enough for prohibition orders to be revoked, or for prohibition orders to be revoked but replaced with what we call an improvement notice, which requires works but doesn't necessarily prohibit the use of the properties. And we'll be involved until these properties are safe, whether that's months, years, however long it takes.